The device inside the vault made Dr. Choi Hyun-woo question everything he thought he knew about physics. He ran his calculations over and over, each time getting results that should have been impossible. The small crystal structure was somehow holding the power of an entire star in a space smaller than his coffee cup. This breaks every law of science we know, Dr. Choi said to the group gathered around the vault. The energy density readings are off the charts. If this thing lost containment for even a microsecond, it would vaporize everything within 1,000 light-years. Velter watched the humans study the device with something between admiration and terror. Your scientists are very good at understanding what they see, the alien said, but they do not understand what they are looking at. This is not just contained energy, this is compressed reality itself. Explanation that followed made everyone's head hurt. Velter spoke of concepts that human language had no words for. The Earthen Empire had not just been conquerors, they had been reality destroyers. They had weapons that could make planets simply stop existing, not destroyed, but erased from the universe as if they had never been. We fought them with conventional weapons for centuries. Velter explained ships and energy beams and nuclear weapons, but you cannot fight an enemy that can make your homeworld disappear from history itself. So our greatest minds found a different solution. The quantum nullifier was not just a weapon, it was a tool that could rewrite the basic rules of space and time in a small area when activated against the Earthen homeworld. It had done more than destroy the planet, it had removed it from the timeline itself. 12 billion Earthen had not just died, they had never existed in the first place. Velter continued. The energy wave that followed rewrote the quantum structure of space across 50 light-years, making that entire region hostile to any form of complex matter. That is why your void sector is empty. Mining engineer Kim Soo-jin, who had been taking notes, looked up with a pale face. You're saying this weapon does not just kill people, it erases them from history, she said. How is that even possible? Voltar gestured to the device floating in its failing containment field. Reality is not as solid as your species believes, it said. Everything that exists is held in place by quantum probability waves. Change those waves, and you change what exists. Change them enough and you can make something never have existed at all. Taemin stared at the small crystal object and felt his engineering mind trying to wrap around concepts that seemed more like magic than science. But the math was there in the ship's computer's equations that described how to fold space and time like origami. As he studied the readouts, something began to make sense. The device was not just a weapon, it was the ultimate engineering tool. The same principles that could erase a planet from existence could be used to build things that were impossible to create any other way. Look at these energy patterns, he said, pointing to his analysis. The containment field is not just holding energy, it is creating a pocket of altered space-time. If we could understand how to control that, we could build fusion reactors the size of coins. Dr. Choi leaned over his shoulder and began following the math. His eyes grew wide as he realized what Taemin was seeing. This is not just energy storage, he whispered, this is localized control over the fundamental forces of the universe. Velter watched the two humans work together and spoke with something approaching respect. The Nexari studied this device for thousands of years. After the war, we tried to understand it so we could build defenses against similar weapons, but we were too afraid of what we might accidentally create. You humans look at it and immediately begin thinking of ways to use it safely. Velter continued. You do not see a weapon of mass destruction, you see a tool with unlimited potential that is both terrifying and wonderful. Security Chief Dahai had been listening to this conversation with growing alarm. You are talking about playing with something that erased 12 billion beings from existence, she said. What if you make a mistake? What if something goes wrong? That is exactly what the Nexari asked ourselves for 5,000 years. Velter replied, and because we were too afraid to take risks, we learned nothing. We sealed the device away and tried to forget it existed, but forgetting something does not make it less dangerous. The device pulsed brighter, as if responding to their discussion. The containment field was continuing to weaken, and everyone could see that they were running out of time. Soon the ancient seals would fail completely, and the device would be fully active. Taemin found himself thinking about his grandmother who had raised him after his parents died. She had been a mechanic who could fix anything from broken watches To damage spacecraft engines, she had always told him that the most dangerous tool was one you were afraid to understand. If you do not know how something works, you cannot predict what it will do, she had said, and if you cannot predict what it will, you cannot control it when it goes wrong. Looking at the quantum nullifier, Taman realized his grandmother had been right. The Nexari had sealed the device away because they were afraid of it, but fear had not made it safer, it had just made it unpredictable. We need to understand this thing, he said to the group, not as a weapon, but as a piece of technology. If we can figure out how it works, we can build proper safeguards around it, maybe even find ways to use its principles for good instead of destruction. Commander Park, who had been quietly listening, nodded slowly. That sounds like something a human would say, he said with a slight smile. We do not run away from dangerous things, we figure out how to make them safe. Veltar looked at the humans with something like hope in its large blue eyes. Perhaps that is why the universe arranged for you to find us, the alien said. Perhaps it is time for a species that is not afraid of the impossible to take responsibility for the most dangerous knowledge in the galaxy. As the containment field continued to fail around the ancient device, everyone realized they were at a crossroads. They could try to seal it away again and hope it stayed hidden forever, or they could take the risk of trying to understand it. The choice they made would determine not just their own fate, but the fate of every thinking being in the universe. The device pulsed with starlight as if waiting for their decision, and time was running out. Amin looked at his hands, the same hands that had accidentally awakened this ancient power. Now those hands might be the key to either saving the galaxy or dooming it to the same fate as the Earthen Empire. The next few hours would tell them which. Deep inside the alien ship, something was happening that made Veltar afraid, more afraid than Taman had ever seen anyone be. The tall alien began shaking, and its silver skin rippled like water in a storm. Its blue eyes went wide with terror as alarms started ringing throughout the ship. The vault, Veltar whispered, and even through the mind-speaking device, Taman could feel the fear in those words. It was never supposed to open. The seals were locked with quantum energy to prevent any access. How did your changes make this happen? Taman looked at his work, the human computers humming happily as they kept the ship running. He had needed more power to run all the life support systems, so he had connected his machines to some unused energy channels. The readings had looked clean and safe, so he thought it would be fine. You thought like a human, Veltar said, but there was no anger in its voice, only sadness. We Nexari build our systems to last forever with safety measures on top of safety measures, but you found a way around protections that were meant to be absolute. The vault was in the very heart of the ship, a round room floating in the middle of empty space, surrounded by layers of energy barriers that bent light around them like looking through water. But now those barriers were failing, and something ancient was waking up inside. Commander Park arrived with Security Chief Dahai and several armed guards, but Veltar stopped them with a gesture. Your weapons are useless here, the alien said. What lies within the vault is not something you can shoot. It is knowledge. Knowledge that ended a war between our people and the Earthen Empire 5,000 years ago. As the energy barriers continued to weaken, they could see into the chamber more clearly. In the center floated a device no bigger than a human fist, but the ship's sensors were going crazy with impossible readings. It was making more energy than a star while staying perfectly stable. Taman stared at the small crystal object floating in the center of the vault. Every instinct he had as an engineer told him that what he was seeing could not exist. The amount of energy contained in something so small should have torn the ship apart, should have destroyed the entire star system. But there it was, calm and beautiful and absolutely terrifying. Dr. Choi Hyun-woo, the station's physicist, arrived and immediately began taking measurements. His face went pale as he read the numbers again and again. This thing is generating the energy output of a medium-sized star, he said in a shaky voice, but it's perfectly controlled. How is that possible? Veltar began to explain, and the translation device struggled with concepts that had no human words. The Earthen were destroyers, the alien said. They ate worlds, enslaved entire species, turned star systems into weapons. We fought them for thousands of years, losing ground with each battle. Alien paused and seemed to gather strength before continuing. Then our greatest scientists created this, the quantum nullifier. One use destroyed the Earthen homeworld, not just the planet, the entire solar system. 12 billion beings gone in an instant. The energy wave tore through subspace, making faster than light travel impossible. In a sphere 50 light-years, Acrostomin felt sick as he realized what they were dealing with. That region of space is still empty. Velter continued. Nothing can live there, nothing can grow there. It is a wound in the universe that will never heal. Mining engineer Kim Soo-jin, who had been quietly listening, suddenly looked up with understanding in her eyes. That is why we have never found evidence of ancient civilizations in the void sector, she said. It is not naturally empty, it was sterilized. The weight of what Taemin's repairs had unleashed settled on everyone like a heavy blanket. Here was a weapon that could delete entire star systems from existence, and as well, meaning attempt to help had accidentally unlocked it. The irony was not lost on him. Human creativity had just created the ultimate problem, but as Taemin studied the device, his engineer's mind began to work. The energy containment principles, the quantum stability fields, the way it bent space and time around itself. This was not just a weapon, it was a key to understanding the basic forces that controlled the universe. The math behind it was beautiful in a way that made his head hurt, but also excited him. If humans could understand even a small part of how it worked, they could solve every energy problem Earth had ever faced. They could build ships that traveled between stars as easily as cars drove between cities. Velter noticed his expression, and something like admiration entered its mental voice. Your species is remarkable, it said. Faced with the ultimate weapon, you see the ultimate tool. The Nexari spent centuries feeling guilty about what we had created. You see it and immediately think of how to build something better. That is what makes humans dangerous. Velter continued, but also what makes them hopeful. You do not accept that something cannot be done. You find ways around every obstacle, even ones that were meant to be permanent. The vault continued to open its ancient seals, failing one by one as the human computers sent power through systems that had been dormant for millennia. Each failed seal brought the device closer to full activation, and nobody knew what would happen when it reached that point. Would it explode and destroy everything within light years? Would it simply float there waiting for someone to use it, or would it do something else, something that even the Nexari had never imagined? The only thing anyone knew for certain was that Taemin's simple repair job had just changed everything. As they watched the small device pulse with contained starlight, Taemin realized that his life as a simple mining station engineer was over. One way or another, he was now responsible for the most dangerous object in the known universe. The question was, what should they do with it? The device seemed to sense their attention and pulsed brighter, as if it knew that its fate was being decided by a species that had barely learned to leave its home planet. The next few hours would determine not just the future of humanity, but possibly the future of all life in the galaxy, and it all depended on what a human engineer thought was the right thing to do. The alien ship docked with their station. 2 hours later, the sound of metal touching metal echoed through the corridors as the two vessels joined together. Everyone on the station gathered in the big docking bay where ships usually brought supplies and equipment, but today they were meeting visitors from the star. Taemin stood with the others watching the airlock door that connected their station to the alien ship. His heart pounded so hard he could hear it in his ears. Commander Park stood next to him looking calm, but Taemin could see his hands shaking just a little. The door opened with a soft hiss and light poured out. It was not the harsh white light humans used, but something softer and warmer, like sunlight through water. Then a shadow appeared in the doorway, and the first alien any human had ever seen stepped onto their station. The being was tall, much taller than any human. Taemin had to look up to see its face, but it was not the scary monster face he had expected from old movies. Instead, it was almost beautiful. The alien's skin looked like liquid silver that moved and changed as it walked. Its eyes were large and deep blue, like looking into the ocean. Captain Yeon Hae-ra, the station's scientist, stepped forward. With her camera and recording equipment shaking with excitement, she was supposed to study alien life, if they ever found any, but she had never really believed this day would come. Now she was recording the most important moment in human history. I am Velter of the Nexari, the alien said, but its mouth did not move. Instead, the words appeared directly in their minds through some kind of machine it carried. The voice was musical and sad, like someone singing about lost friends. Our ship, the alien continued, your people would call it impossible technology. We call it dying. The sadness in its mental voice made everyone in the room feel sorry for it, even though they had just met the alien. Explained that its ship was full of poison that was slowly killing everyone on board. 47 beings were getting sicker every minute as their ship's protection failed. The machines that kept them safe were breaking down, and they did not know how to fix them. Taman surprised himself by stepping forward before anyone could stop him. "I can help," he said, and everyone turned to look at him, including the tall alien. "I do not understand your technology, but I understand how things work. Physics is the same everywhere, right?" What happened next was the hardest 12 hours of Taman's life. He followed Velter onto the alien ship and walked through corridors that seemed to glow with their own light. Everything was curved and smooth like the inside of a seashell, but it was also clearly a machine. The ship's control room was amazing. Lights floated in the air without being attached to anything. Screens showed information in colors that humans had no names for. The whole room hummed with energy that made Taman's hair stand up, but the alien ship had problems that Taman could recognize even if he did not understand the technology. Warning lights flashed everywhere. The air smelled wrong, like electricity before a thunderstorm, and some of the floating lights were flickering and going dark. Velter showed him the main problem. The ship's brain was a huge crystal that normally glowed bright blue, but now it was dim and cracked. Poison energy was leaking from it into the air, making everyone on the ship sick. The aliens had tried everything they knew, but nothing worked. Timon studied the crystal and the machines around it. For hours he traced wires and energy paths, trying to understand how everything connected. The alien technology was so advanced it felt like magic, but underneath it all were the same basic rules he knew from human machines. The breakthrough came when Taman realized something important. The aliens had built their ship to last forever. Every part was perfect and designed to work for thousands of years. But that also meant when something broke, it was almost impossible to fix. Human machines were different. They broke down all the time, so humans had learned to build things that could be repaired quickly and easily. Sometimes human engineers had to use parts that were not perfect, but they worked well enough to solve the problem. "I need to bypass your main computer," Taman told Velter through hand signals and simple drawings. The alien looked shocked at the idea. It would be like doing heart surgery with a stone knife, but it was the only way to save the ship. Working together, they began connecting human emergency computers to the alien ship systems. It was like trying to make a bicycle work with spaceship parts. Nothing fit the way it should, and everything had to be forced to work together. The human computers were tiny compared to the alien crystal brain. They could not do complex calculations or control the ship's weapons, but they could do simple things like keeping the air clean and the lights on. And sometimes simple things were enough. As the human computers took over the basic functions of the ship, the poisonous energy began to fade. The air started smelling clean again. The lights stopped flickering and began to glow steady and bright. Most importantly, the 47 aliens on the ship began to feel better. It worked, Velter said, and for the first time since they met, the alien sounded happy. "Your primitive technology saved us." "How is this possible?" Taman wiped sweat from his face and smiled. "Sometimes the best way to fix something complicated is to make it simple," he said. "We humans break things a lot, so we have learned to fix them in ways that work even if they are not perfect." The alien ship was not as advanced as it had been before. The human computers were slow and basic compared to the crystal brain, but the ship was alive and its crew was safe. Sometimes that was more important than being perfect. As they worked together, Taman began to understand that the aliens were not so different from humans. They had the same problems and the same desire to explore the stars. They had just solved those problems in different ways. The aliens had built amazing technology that lasted for centuries without breaking, but when it did break, they did not know how to fix it quickly. Humans built things that broke often, but they also knew how to fix anything with whatever parts they had available. By the end of those 12 hours, Taman and Velter had become friends. Despite coming from different worlds, they had worked together to solve an impossible problem, and in doing so, they had learned that intelligence and creativity were the same everywhere in the universe. The alien ship was saved and its crew was alive, but neither Taman nor Velter knew that their repair work had accidentally awakened something that had been sleeping in the ship's deepest chambers, something that was never supposed to wake up again. Kong Tae-min sat alone in the big metal room full of machines and blinking lights. The clock on the wall showed 3 in the morning, but sleep was far from his mind. His third cup of coffee sat steaming on the desk next to him while his hands moved quickly over the glowing computer screens. The mining station where he worked floated in space around a planet called Kepler 442b. It was a lonely place where people dug for valuable rocks and metals. Most of the crew was sleeping now, but Tae-min never slept well. His job was to keep all the machines running, and machines never slept either. He was checking the big energy makers that powered the whole station when something strange happened. A sound came through the radio that made him stop and listen. It was not like any sound he had heard before. Numbers and patterns that seemed to cry out for help. Tae-min put down his coffee cup and leaned forward. The sound was coming from somewhere in space, but it was moving toward them. The patterns were complicated, but somehow he could tell they meant something important. Even though he could not understand the language behind them, he could see that someone was in trouble. The sounds had math in them, numbers that any smart person would know. No matter what planet they came from, the same numbers that described how spaceships moved through the stars and how energy worked. The same numbers that meant a ship was breaking down and needed help. Tae-min pressed buttons on his control panel to find out where the sounds were coming from. His heart started beating faster as he realized what he was looking at. The signals were coming from something big, something that was not made by humans. He grabbed his radio and called his boss, Commander Park Ji-woo. Even though it was the middle of the night, Park was a tough old man who had been working in space for 30 years. If anyone would know what to do, it was him. Park arrived in the control room just 5 minutes later. His gray hair was messy from sleep, but his eyes were sharp and ready for action. Behind him came Lita Hai, the woman in charge of keeping everyone safe on the station. She looked worried and kept her hand near her weapon. Tae-min showed them the computer screens with all the strange signals. The patterns were getting stronger, which meant whatever was sending them was getting closer. Park studied the numbers and patterns for a long time before he spoke. "We are engineers, not soldiers," Park said in his deep voice. Even though Dahai was shaking her head and pointing at her weapon, Park kept talking. "If there is a ship in trouble, we help them. That is what good people do in space." Dahai did not like this idea at all. She thought it might be dangerous to help something they did not understand, but Park was the boss and he had made up his mind they would try to help whoever was sending the signals. As they watched the screens, a new dot appeared. This dot was moving toward their station, and it was big, much bigger than anything humans had ever built in space. Tae-min felt his hands shake as he realized they were about to meet beings from another world. The dot on the screen became a shape, and then the shape became a real ship floating outside their windows. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time. It was 3 times bigger than their whole mining station, and it moved through space like a giant silver fish swimming through water. But the ship was hurt. Black marks covered its sides and pieces were missing from its hull. It looked like it had been in a fight and lost smoke, and sparks came from holes in its metal skin. Yet even damaged, it was the most amazing thing any of them had ever seen. The ship seemed to be made from metal that changed color as it moved. Sometimes it looked silver, sometimes blue, and sometimes it seemed to glow with its own light. The way it was built showed that whoever made it understood things about space and energy that humans were still learning. Tae-min stared at the ship and felt something he had never felt before. His whole life he had been fixing machines and building things, but this ship was built by minds that thought in ways he could barely imagine. Yet something deep inside him told him that machines were machines no matter who built them. The first real message came an hour later. It started with simple math problems that any child could solve. 2 + 2 = 4. 3 × 3 = 9. Then it moved to harder math that only smart people would know. Finally, words started coming through their computer that tried to turn the alien language into human words. "Help," the voice said, and even though it came through a machine, Tae-min could hear that someone was scared and desperate. Systems failing, the voice continued. "Crew dying, please help us." The voice was strange and musical, like someone singing a sad song, but the fear in it was real, and it made Tae-min want to do something to help. Park and Dahai looked at each other, then at him. They all knew this was the most important moment in human history. First contact with another thinking species from the stars was happening right here at their little mining station. Tae-min realized that his simple job of keeping machines running had just become the most important job in the universe. The alien ship drifted closer, and they could see more details now. It had windows that glowed with soft light and parts that moved in ways that seemed impossible. The ship was clearly very advanced, but it was also clearly dying. More messages came through the radio. Now, the alien voice was getting weaker, but it kept asking for help. It said their ship was poisoning them and their people were getting sick. They needed someone who understood machines to help them fix what was broken. Taemin looked at his hands. The same hands that had fixed 1,000 broken machines over the years. Could these hands help save an alien ship? Could a simple human engineer do something that advanced aliens could not do for themselves? The ship was close enough now that they could see it through the station windows. It was magnificent, even its damaged state. The aliens who built it clearly knew secrets about space and energy that humans had not discovered yet, but they needed help and they were asking humans to provide it. As Taemin watched the dying alien ship drift closer to their station, he made a decision that would change everything. He did not know if he could help, but he knew he had to try. After all, machines were machines and problems were problems, no matter who or what had made them. The alien ship was waiting for an answer, and Taemin was ready to give one. The argument started in the station's conference room and went on for hours. Everyone had an opinion about what to do with the device, and no two people agreed. Security Chief Dahai stood at one end of the table, her face hard with determination. "We are talking about the power to wipe out entire solar systems," she said, pointing at the data pad showing readings from the vault. "No one should have that kind of power, not us, not the aliens, not anyone. The only safe choice is to destroy it before it can be used." Dr. Choi Hyun-woo sat at the other end of the table, surrounded by calculations and diagrams. He looked up from his work with excitement in his eyes. "Destroy it," he said. "You want to destroy the greatest scientific discovery in human history. The knowledge in that device could solve every energy problem we have. Think about it," he continued, gesturing at his papers. "Clean, unlimited power, faster than light travel, the ability to reshape matter at the quantum level. We could turn dead planets into garden worlds. We could give every human colony enough energy to last forever. But what if someone uses it as a weapon?" Dahai shot back. "What if it falls into the wrong hands? Do you want to be responsible for giving terrorists or dictators the power to erase cities from existence?" Taemin sat between them, feeling the weight of responsibility crushing down on him. He had opened the vault with his repairs, and now everyone was looking to him to help decide what to do. The device was still floating in its failing containment field, pulsing like a heartbeat. Captain Yan Hera, the xenobiologist, had been recording everything for the historical record. She looked up from her camera and spoke quietly. "This is not just about us anymore," she said. "We are the first humans to make contact with an alien species. What we do here will set the pattern for every future relationship. If we destroy the device, we show that humans are too afraid to handle advanced technology. If we keep it and use it badly, we prove that humans cannot be trusted with power. But if we can find a way to use it wisely," she paused, "we might earn the respect of other species we have not met yet." Velter had been listening to the human debate with fascination. "When the Nexari first encountered the Earthen, we tried to share our technology peacefully," the alien said. "The Earthen used our gifts to build better weapons, to enslave our allies, to turn our own creations against us. We learned that advanced technology in the wrong hands is worse than no technology at all," Velter continued. "But we also learned that hiding from dangerous knowledge does not make it go away. It just makes you unprepared when someone else discovers it." Medical officer Han Ji-soo, who had been treating the recovered Nexari crew members, offered a different view. "Their people are alive because Taemin was willing to take risks," she said. "He did not know if his repairs would work, but he tried anyway. Maybe that is what this device needs." She gestured toward the vault, "not to be locked away like the Nexari did, but to be understood by minds that see possibilities instead of just dangers. Human minds that are not afraid to fail and try again." Mining engineer Kim Soo-jin had been reviewing the historical records that Velter had shared with them. She looked up with a troubled expression. "The Earthen Empire ruled for 10,000 years before the Nexari stopped them," she said. "How many civilizations did they destroy while the Nexari were afraid to act? If there are other civilizations out there with weapons like this, we need to understand the technology." Kim continued, "We cannot protect ourselves from something we do not understand, and we cannot build defenses against an enemy that is thousands of years ahead of us." The debate continued. As the hours passed, some argued for caution, others for bold action. Commander Park listened to all sides before speaking his mind. "I have been in space for 30 years, he said. "I have seen what happens when people are too afraid to take risks, and I have seen what happens when they take too many. This is not about being brave or cowardly," he continued. "This is about being responsible. We have a choice to make, and whatever we choose, we will have to live with the consequence." Estimin finally stood up and walked to the window that looked out at the alien ship. The vault was glowing brighter now. As the containment field continued to fail, they were running out of time to make a decision. "What if we are asking the wrong question?" he said, turning back to the group. Everyone looked at him as he continued. "We keep debating whether to keep the device or destroy it, but what if the real question is whether we can understand it well enough to make it safe?" He began pacing as his engineering mind worked through the problem. "The Nexari sealed it away because they were afraid of making mistakes, but they never learned how to control it properly. What if we studied it together? Nexari knowledge and human creativity working side by side." Dr. Choi sat up straighter as he understood what Taemin was suggesting. "A joint research project," he said, "combine their theoretical knowledge with our practical problem-solving approach." Multiple safeguards built by both species. Velter stood up and moved closer to the humans. "For 5,000 years, my people have carried the guilt of what we created," the alien said. "We told ourselves we had no choice, but we never tried to find a better way. Perhaps it is time to try again." The breakthrough came when they realized they did not have to solve the problem alone. The Nexari had 47 crew members who were alive because humans had been willing to help strangers. The humans had learned things about alien technology that no human had ever known before. Together they had already achieved the impossible by saving the Nexari ship. Maybe together they could achieve something even more impossible, making the most dangerous device in the universe into something that could help instead of harm us. The containment field around the device began to flicker and fade. The group made their choice. They would not destroy the quantum nullifier, and they would not hide it away. Instead, they would study it together with both species, working to understand its secrets and build protections against its dangers. It was a risk that could destroy them all, or it could be the beginning of a new age of cooperation between species. The device pulsed one more time as if approving of their decision, and then the containment field finally failed. Now there was no going back. They had chosen to trust each other with the most dangerous knowledge in the galaxy. Time would tell if they had chosen wisely. 3 months later, Taemin stood in a completely different place. The research facility they had built together floated in space between Earth and the Nexari homeworld. Both species had worked together to create something that neither could have built alone. The facility looked like a human space station, mixed with Nexari flowing architecture, creating something beautiful and functional. The device that had once been called the quantum nullifier now sat in the center of the research lab, surrounded by layers of protection that combined the best ideas from both species. Human quick thinking and Nexari patient engineering had created safeguards that neither species could have imagined alone. But the most important change was not in the technology, it was in the people. Humans and Nexari worked side by side in the lab, sharing ideas and solving problems together. The fear that had kept the device locked away for 5,000 years had been replaced by curiosity and hope. Dr. Choi had made the first breakthrough 2 weeks into the project by studying how the device contained stellar-level energy in such a small space. He discovered principles that could revolutionize human technology. Fusion reactors the size of batteries became possible, opening up unlimited clean energy for every human. Colin Evaltar and Taemin, working together, had figured out the second breakthrough. The way the device bent space and time could be used for instant communication across the galaxy. Messages that used to take years to travel between star systems could now be sent instantly. But the biggest discovery was about humanity itself. The Nexari had chosen to share their greatest secret with a species they had known for less than a year because they saw something in human nature that gave them hope, where the Nexari had become careful to the point of never taking risks. Humans kept their willingness to try new things, to fail, and to try again. Your species has something we lost. Long ago, Velter told Temin as they worked on improving the device's containment system, "We became so afraid of making mistakes that we stopped trying to solve problems. You still believe that any problem can be solved if you think about it hard." Enough the research facility had become home to over 200 beings from both species. They had created new departments for studying quantum physics, energy containment, and space-time manipulation, but they had also created something more important. They had created Trust Station Commander Park had become the first human ambassador to the Nexari Collective. His job was to help both species understand each other and work together on projects that would benefit everyone. He often thought about how strange it was that first contact had happened not through diplomacy or war but through one engineer who could not walk away from a broken machine. The device itself had been transformed from a weapon of destruction into a tool of creation. The principles that had once erased the Earth and homeworld were now being used to build new technologies that could help billions of beings across the galaxy. They had created matter replicators that could turn raw elements into anything needed, from food to complex machinery. They had built shield generators that could protect entire planets from asteroids or hostile fleets. They had even begun work on terraforming devices that could turn barren worlds into garden planets. But they had also created weapons. The galaxy was not a safe place, and there were other species out there that might not be as peaceful as humans and Nexari. The defense systems they built were powerful enough to protect their worlds, but carefully designed so they could not be used for conquest. Every breakthrough came with safeguards built by both species. Any new technology had to be approved by committees of humans and Nexari working together. No single person or species could make decisions about how the most powerful technologies would be used. The Nexari brought wisdom gained from thousands of years of careful study. The humans brought creativity and the willingness to take calculated risks. Together, they achieved things that neither could have done alone. As Taemin made his final checks on the new containment system, he thought about his grandmother, who had taught him that the best engineers were the ones who could fix anything, even if they had to break a few rules to do it. He had just proven her right on a scale that spanned the galaxy. The device pulsed gently in its new home, surrounded by protections that made it safe but still accessible for study. It no longer threatened to destroy star systems. Instead, it promised to help build new ones. The Forbidden Vault had been opened not by force or cunning, but by the most human of traits, the inability to leave a problem unsolved. Other alien species had begun to take notice. Ships from a dozen different civilizations had made contact, asking about the new alliance between humans and Nexari. Some came as friends wanting to trade and learn. Others came as potential threats, testing the defenses of the new partners. But the alliance held strong human adaptability combined with Nexari patience, created diplomatic solutions that satisfied everyone. The research facility became a meeting place where different species could come to solve problems and share knowledge. The greatest success was not in the technology they built, but in the example they set. Two completely different species had chosen to trust each other with their most dangerous secrets and had found ways to turn those secrets into tools for building a better galaxy. As Taemin walked through the research facility, he saw human and Nexari scientists working together on projects that would have been impossible for either species alone. Young humans learned advanced physics from ancient Nexari teachers, while young Nexari learned creative problem-solving from human engineers. The facility had become more than a research lab. It had become a symbol of what was possible when different peoples chose cooperation over fear. Visitors from across the galaxy came to see how two species had turned their greatest weapon into their greatest hope. Looking back, Taemin realized that the most important repair he had ever made was not to the Nexari ship, but to the relationship between species that had let fear keep them apart. The Forbidden Vault had contained more than just a dangerous device. It had contained the possibility of friendship between the stars. As he watched humans and Nexari working together to build a better future, Taemin smiled and returned to his work. There were always more problems to solve, more things to fix, and more impossibilities to make possible. After all, that was what engineers did. The device that had once threatened to destroy civilizations now helped create them, and the engineer who had accidentally Open the Forbidden's Vault had helped open the door to a new age of cooperation among the stars. The future was bright with possibilities, and Taemin could not wait to see what problems they would solve next.